Well, hello, everyone. This is Matthew coming to you from the South Carolina State Museum's Observatory. I'm the observatory manager here at the State Museum, and we have a live view of Jupiter up on that we're sharing with you this evening. So that's what you're looking at right there. One of the things we have going on tonight is the atmosphere is really, really unstable. And that means that Jupiter looks like it's dancing around a whole lot. And we're also not seeing a whole lot of detail on it. I can sort of make out some of the cloud bands right now. You might see some little stripes going across the planet. But because the atmosphere is so turbulent tonight, it's being a little hard to see some of the details. This is actually not uncommon to get more turbulent atmospheres as we get into the fall and winter months with these colder evenings. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the Facebook or YouTube comments. I will see those questions right in front of me, and I'm happy to answer them. And otherwise, I'll just hang out and we'll let you all enjoy the view, and we'll see if any questions come in. Um, we might do some switching back and forth to some video of Jupiter that I took on a night when the atmosphere is a little more steady so we can see those cloud bands better. But for now, we'll just hang out, let you look at the live view, and ask us any questions you might have. Hey, Linda. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us from Key West. So what I'm doing right now is I'm changing the camera settings so that we really can't see any detail on Jupiter anymore, but what you might see emerging are two sort of dot-looking things on either side of Jupiter. Those are actually two of Jupiter's moons. You also see some rather strange color effects from the camera and actually also from the telescope, but really mostly from the camera. So Anita asks, what are we doing tonight? So yep, Anita, great to see you. We're looking at Jupiter, and right now I have the view set where we're looking at Jupiter, which is that white blob kind of in the middle there, and then those two little dots on either side, those are actually two of the moons of Jupiter. So Lynn asks, is Jupiter the bright glowing object I keep seeing that sometimes look like it is a huge star? So yes, they're actually, if you're looking in the sky itself, so not on our live stream, but if you actually go outside and you're looking at the sky, there are two bright planets out right now. Um, there is Jupiter, and then there's an even brighter planet, which is off in the west, kind of not too far away from where the sun set, and that is Venus. So we have Venus and Jupiter, and then there's also Saturn up there. And Saturn is quite a bit dimmer than Jupiter and Venus. So Mickey asked, do the moons have names? Yes, they do. And I'm going to see if I either actually have an app on my phone. So I'm going to look this up and see if I can tell you which of those moons we're seeing. So I think the moons we're seeing are Ganymede and Europa. Io should be somewhere around there, but I think it's getting lost in the glare of Jupiter. Um, So, in a small telescope, we can see four of Jupiter's largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Jupiter actually has 79 moons, though. So, that's actually something we see with these gas giant planets is that their gravity's so strong that they often capture things and turn them into moons. Did you see the eclipse? So from my house, the moon was actually behind a bunch of trees. So I did not get a great view of the eclipse, unfortunately. Our planetarium manager, Liz, I believe she got a good view of the eclipse. So it looks like our atmosphere might be steadying just a bit. So I'm going to change camera settings back. Let's just see if we can get a better view here of the actual planet. So let's see. I'm going to change these gain and exposure settings on the camera. Let's see if we can actually get some of those cloud bands on Jupiter. These are very finicky settings. Oh, there we go. See if we can get it a little brighter there. Okay. Maybe. Goodness, you're being finicky tonight, camera. Woo! And you might notice that sometimes our image of Jupiter is looking purple. And that's actually not Jupiter. That's actually our camera here. This camera we're using actually um, has a little bit of something going on with it. And it's tending to make our planet images look like Smurf planets. I'm just going to change the gain here a little bit. We're actually in the process of getting a new camera um, that we're going to be using for our public solar viewing here at the observatory. And I'm also going to be really interested to try that camera on planetary viewing as well. Our solar camera that we use here, if you've ever been to the museum to see the sun, that camera we've been using since the observatory opened in 2014. And it's time for that camera to go to a very well-deserved retirement. So yeah, you can sort of see two of the cloud bands right there. And again, the atmosphere isn't really steady tonight, so that makes it kind of a challenge. When is the next batch of meteors visible? So I think we've got the Leonids coming up, or did the Leonids already happen? But really, it's the Leonids and the Geminids. So the Leonid meteors, let me look that up. Leonid meteor shower. So the Leonid meteor shower has already peaked. So that means the next one coming up is going to be the Geminids. So the Geminid meteor shower, let me see if I can find those dates for you. So the Geminid meteor shower is going to peak this year between December 13th and 14th. So just a few weeks from now. So once again, if you've just joined us, we're looking at a live view of Jupiter from our telescope here at the South Carolina State Museum. And feel free to pop any questions that you have in the Facebook or YouTube comments. I'll actually see those questions right here in front of me, and we can get those answers out for you. So let me know if you have any questions. What is the brightest heavenly body? Well, so the brightest object in our sky is actually the sun, and that's followed by the moon, especially when it's full moon. And then the third brightest thing is Venus. So we actually have Venus in the sky right tonight. So go outside if you've got clear weather, look off to the west, and you'll see Venus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch our view of Jupiter. Since tonight we don't really have a great atmosphere to see detail on Jupiter, I'm actually going to switch us over to some footage of Jupiter that we took a few months ago. It's back in September. And in this view of Jupiter, you can actually see some more detail. So you'll actually clearly be able to see some of the cloud bands. So this is actually the same camera, the same telescope, but on a night when the atmosphere was a lot steadier and we could actually see those cloud bands on Jupiter. So now you can see those stripes going across the planet. Those are those cloud bands. Linda says, awesome, we found it here. Beautiful. Linda, did you find Jupiter or Venus or both? Yeah, mixed bag in Florence. It's actually pretty clear here in Colombia, though there are a few high clouds. Those high clouds actually don't really affect our views of the planets. What's really affecting the view tonight is just the atmosphere is so unsteady. And actually, some of that could be just the air around the museum building. Often, as we get into the winter months, we get really unsteady views here in our telescope because the museum building is giving off heat because the heat's on. And that keeps us warm inside, but it causes heat currents to rise up off the building. And especially when those rise into the cold winter outside air, that can create some pretty funky air currents in front of the telescope. And that's when we get those images that just jostle around a lot. So, once again, if you've just joined us, feel free to pop questions in the comments over both Facebook or YouTube. We're actually having a look at Jupiter from the observatory here at the State Museum tonight. So, feel free to pop those questions in the chat. So, how many of you know the names of one or more of the moons of Jupiter? If you do, pop those in the comments. Linda, I'm wondering if those are some of the small moons of Jupiter there. Oh, great. Glad you got to see the eclipse, Michael. Yeah, from my place, the moon was actually behind this bank of trees I have off to the west. So it was not the best view. Now, if you missed this eclipse, don't worry. There's actually even better lunar eclipse coming up in May. So I think it's May 15th, going into the wee hours of the morning on May 16th. There's going to be a lunar eclipse again. The difference between that eclipse and the one we just had is that lunar eclipse in May is going to be total for us here in Colombia. So the lunar eclipse we just had was actually a partial eclipse. So not all of the moon was eclipsed. Most of it was, but not all. And the other nice thing about the lunar eclipse coming up in May, is that the total eclipse is actually going to be considerably earlier in the night. It's going to be around midnight. So you won't have to get up early to see it. You will have to stay up kind of late, but not horribly late, and we will see the moon get completely eclipsed. So really, the lunar eclipse that we saw the other day was actually just kind of a warm up here in Colombia for the one we have coming up in May of 2022. So don't worry, we got another eclipse coming up now. We just need to cross our fingers for clear weather that night in May. I'm going to take a look at the telescope live view here and see how that's going. Let's see here. I'm going to do some switcheroo here. At least I think I'm going to do some switcheroo. Oh, why isn't my computer listening to me? I think something might have crashed. Yes, Danny, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Io. Yeah, those are actually the 4 largest moons of Jupiter. Let's see if I can get our view back. We had, I think, a little computer glitch there. Never happens. All right, stop your little blue loop thing that says connecting and actually connect. Come on, computer. Okay. What is your deal? Let's try exiting from my software and restarting it. Okay. The tech is in a mood tonight. All right. Oh, so it looks like oh, yeah, okay. Why are you doing this? I'm actually going to go in the observatory and take a look and troubleshoot it here. Yep. All right. Hang tight. I'm going to go in the dome and see if I can figure out what our lovely computers are doing or not doing. Okay, let's see if my little troubleshooting didn't bear any results here. Looks like the computer running the telescope camera might have lost internet access, and that was the source of our trouble. Let's see here. Alrighty. Let's try connecting. Maybe. All right, I'm gonna go back in the dome and see what's going on. Seems like things are still being a little silly. All right, looks like we might actually be back in business here. Let's see. Restart that screen share. I actually had to reboot a computer. All right, let's see here. There we go. I think we've now got our view of Jupiter back. This is actually the live view from the telescope. Again, with tonight, we don't have the world's best seeing. So that's why the image is kind of jumping around a lot. The atmosphere is actually a little bit unsteady. I'm going to see if I can get Jupiter a little more in the middle of the picture here by making some very small movements of the telescope. Let's see what I can do here without causing trouble. I'm actually moving the telescope without even looking at it. I'm looking at my computer screen here in the observatory classroom, and that's always a little bit risky. But looks like we got Jupiter back in the center there for you, so it looks a little better. So once again, if you do have questions, feel free to pop those questions in the chat, either Facebook or YouTube, depending on where you're watching, and we'll get them answered for you. I want to do a little bit of adjusting of the camera here just to see if we can see a little more on Jupiter. I think the atmosphere actually might have steadied just a little bit, and I can now see, if I get the camera setting just right, I can now see the two cloud bands in the middle. You actually may not be able to see them if you're watching on your phone. If you're on a computer, if you look, you might see just a little bit of like striping on the planet, and those are actually those cloud bands. And they're kind of brownish looking. So let's see, got a couple of questions coming in here. Anita, is the planetarium open to the public? Yes. So the planetarium is open to the public here at the museum for shows. You can find information about that on the museum website. The observatory is also open to the public for daytime solar viewing only. We're not doing a lot of really any night viewing except for these live streams, except for COVID. But except I can't talk. We aren't doing a lot of nighttime viewing except these live streams because of the COVID situation. So now I got that out. So what do we know about that fragment of the moon that's orbiting with the Earth? I don't know very much about that, although I did see some news headlines about that. So this is what I'm going to go see if I can find a current news article on that and see what I can learn kind of on the fly here. So, moon fragment. Yeah, here we are. This is actually a press release from the University of Arizona, which has quite the planetary science department. So it's a near-Earth asteroid, and astronomers think it, from the University of Arizona, might think it might be actually a piece of the moon that got knocked out somehow. Do we know how? Yeah, researchers aren't yet sure how the asteroid may have broken loose from the moon. Okay, very interesting. So astronomers don't really know how that little moon fragment came to be, but it was observed by the Large Binocular Telescope, which is basically this giant telescope on a mountain east of Tucson, Arizona, Mount Graham. And it's actually a telescope that is two telescopes in one. It looks like the world's biggest pair of binoculars. So that's actually what it is. And that giant telescope took the data that found that moon fragment. I've actually been in that telescope several times when I lived in Arizona. Hey, Regina, how are you? There's Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Thanks for joining us. So, one of the things to watch for on Jupiter when we have a night like tonight, when the atmosphere is kind of unsteady, is there'll actually be moments where the atmosphere steadies. And Cindy asked, "What are we looking at?" This is actually a live view of Jupiter from our telescope here, the State Museum. So there'll be moments where the atmosphere will sort of settle down a bit and you'll get these like little glimpses of more detail. Like you actually might see those cloud bands come into focus. So a lot of times Jupiter might look like a circular blob, but then there'll be little moments where you might see like a band, like a sort of brownish band stretching across the planet. Those are those cloud bands. Like right now, actually, there's a moment where it just kind of steadied. Yeah, so getting some moments right now. It's like, oop, really blurry. See if we can find a minute. Steadied a little bit there. So if you go outside and look at the stars at night, you've probably noticed they twinkle. And the stars twinkle for the same reason that Jupiter looks like it's dancing around a lot tonight. It's actually the turbulence in our atmosphere. And again, on winter nights, so of course we're not really in winter yet, but on nights during the cooler part of the year, we actually tend to have more atmospheric turbulence. So if you've looked up at the stars in the winter, especially on a really cold night, and you think, wow, those stars are really twinkling a lot, it's not just you, it is actually the case. On those really cold winter nights with unsteady atmospheres, the stars do appear to twinkle more. And of course, the wintertime sky is really, really bright. There are a lot of really bright stars in the winter sky, like the stars in Orion, and there's Sirius, which is the brightest star in the night sky. All those stars, those really bright stars, actually look really kind of pretty when they twinkle a lot on a winter night. So since I know we've had a few of you just join us, I'm going to change our view here so we can see some of those moons of Jupiter. So let me get my camera control software up. We're going to kick the exposure up on the camera. Just kicked it down, so Jupiter just disappeared. Come on, go up. Okay, it's about as far as I can take it without it getting really goofy. There we go. Turn up the gain on the camera as well. And you'll see those like little dot things popping out on either side of Jupiter now. They do kind of look like little blobs. Again, that's because of the atmosphere of the Earth being really unstable. Those are two of Jupiter's moons. Ha 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 ha, Michael. Really, really funny. So we've got two of Jupiter's moons in the view now. You'll see because I adjusted the camera, Jupiter now looks like a big white blob. Um, I had to make the camera more light sensitive to see the moon, but as a result of that, we ended up with not really being able to see Jupiter that well. But I do have an app that we can use to identify those moons. I think we're looking at Europa and Ganymede. It's either that or Europa and Io. So either Europa and Ganymede or Europa and Io. So we're only looking at a small chunk of the sky here, so usually we can see 4 moons. Those other moons are off outside the field of view. Yeah, so there are 2 moons in this view right now. There are 4 of these large moons that we can see in a small telescope, and then Jupiter has a total of 79 moons. Yeah, 79 moons. Those big gas giant planets don't mess around when it comes to moons. Actually, one of the big reasons for that is planets like Jupiter and Saturn, since they're the biggest planets in the solar system, they have quite a bit of gravity, and they tend to capture things that pass by, like asteroids and such, and capture them in orbit and turn them into moons. So some of Jupiter's moons actually might be things that it caught. Other planet that has moons that could be captured asteroids is Mars. Mars has those 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, which is Greek for fear and panic. And Phobos and Deimos actually don't look very much like our moon. They're not round like our moon here, the Earth. And they very likely are asteroids that Mars captured. Does Jupiter have the largest amount of moons? I want to say Saturn has more. Let me find out for you really quick. Okay. So let's see here. Number of moons. Saturn. Yeah, so Jupiter has 79 moons. Saturn, not to be outdone, has 82 moons. So yeah, Saturn actually has more. Yep, that's right, Michael. There actually are several moons around Pluto. There's Charon, and then there's some other smaller ones. So one of the things I always like to mention when we're talking about the moons of the outer planets is that they are worlds in and of themselves. So, for example, we have with one of Jupiter's moons called Io, which is the most volcanic body in the solar system. Another one of Jupiter's moons called Europa has an icy crust, and we think, as astronomers think, it has an subsurface ocean, a liquid water ocean under that icy crust, which is like, oh, I wonder if there could be life in that ocean. And then over on Saturn, there's Titan. Titan has an atmosphere that's kind of like our early Earth, and it also rains liquid methane on Titan. And Saturn also has a moon called Enceladus, which has these geysers at the poles. So there actually are astronomers who spend their entire lives and careers studying the moons of the solar system. It's like each moon is its own like little worldlet, its own little mini world, and they're all so different. It's like a zoo out there. How different all the moons are, especially the moons of the outer planets. So it's just one of the really, really cool parts of our solar system. We're talking about how Ganymede's actually larger than Mercury. Yeah, some of these moons are actually pretty big. And the only planets in our solar system that don't have moons are Mercury and Venus. So if you've just joined us, feel free to pop questions in the comments, either on Facebook or YouTube. We're looking at a live view of Jupiter from our telescope here at the South Carolina State Museum. The view we have right now shows Jupiter as that kind of white blob in the middle, and then there are two of Jupiter's moons on either side. They're those little dots. So glad you could join us. Thanks for taking some time out in your schedules to have a look at the night sky with us. Thank you, Anita. Thanks for the nice note. So we do these live streams on the first and third Saturdays of the month. And now that the time has shifted off of daylight saving time and sunset is earlier, we're now doing these live streams at 7:30 to 8:30. So it's an earlier time than it was back earlier in the fall. Our next live stream is on December 4th. And on that live stream, we're going to be talking about and hopefully getting some live views of some deep sky objects that are in the sky this time of year, like the Andromeda Galaxy. Um, if it's cloudy that night, with any luck, we will have been able to actually get some recent images of the Andromeda Galaxy from the telescope, maybe earlier that week. So as we get closer to December 4th, I'm going to be watching the weather. And if it looks like December 4th itself is going to be a cloud out, I'm going to get some pictures on another night. So keeping an eye on that. Hopefully all that works out. Um, but that's going to be kind of the focus of our next live stream. The planets Jupiter and Saturn, we've enjoyed Jupiter and Saturn for the past several months. They're starting to work their way out of the sky now. They're still with us, but over the next few months, they're going to be getting a little lower in the sky around sunset. And we're really getting into the time of year when we talk about some of these really amazing deep sky objects, like the Andromeda Galaxy is great. And then we have the Orion Nebula, giant cloud of gas where stars are forming, um, that we'll be able to see as we get more into the first few months of the new year. So, like January and February, we'll be able to have some amazing views of the Orion Nebula. Why don't the two planets you mentioned have moons? I'm actually not sure. Great question. I don't know. Trying to think if I can think of any reasons. As different moons have different formation histories. Like we think our moon here on the Earth formed when something smacked into the Earth, but then some moons formed maybe because the planet captured them. So Cindy asks, is this where the old Gibbs Planetarium is at? I used to love to go there and look at the skies. I just moved back to Columbia. Well, Cindy, welcome back to Columbia. So the Gibbs Planetarium was over on the university campus area. It was part of the art museum. It is actually no longer there. The planetarium for Columbia is actually here at the South Carolina State Museum on Gervais Street. So we have an observatory and a planetarium here at the South Carolina State Museum. I'm running this program from the observatory. So I'm actually using our telescope and we're looking at the live sky. But we also have the Planetarium Theater where we can show you a simulated sky and some awesome shows on astronomy topics and other topics as well. So if you're looking for a planetarium experience here in Columbia, come here to the South Carolina State Museum. The planetarium here is really kind of the successor to the Gibbs Planetarium, which closed back in the mid 1990s. We actually have the projector from the Gibbs Planetarium on display here, and it's on display right by the planetarium dome, so you can see that projector. Um, the planetarium that we have now actually has a different type of projection system from the Gibbs. The Gibbs had this machine that projected stars all over the skies, and now we're using a digital system that uses computers to draw images on our dome. Yeah, that's right, Michael. It's kind of tricky to find truly dark skies in South Carolina. We can find dark-ish skies here in South Carolina, but yeah, it's hard to find like really dark skies. You kind of have to go out to the western U.S. for that. So the cost, I would recommend looking on the museum website. That's where you'll find info on admission prices and show tickets. We do have a show that we're running here at the planetarium for a limited time, so you might want to come check it out. It's called Mars 1001. Mars 1001 is a show that um, takes us on a kind of fictional first journey, human mission to Mars. So it looks forward to the future, to what a potential human mission to Mars might look like. And it's this really beautiful show. It's really has beautiful graphics and really amazing music. It's very inspirational. So that's showing for really a kind of fairly limited time. So if you want to see Mars 1001, I'd recommend coming to the museum as soon as you can. Just as a reminder, this coming week we are open on Friday, next Friday, so Black Friday. We're also open on Saturday, so the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving, and also that Sunday. However, we are closed to the public on Wednesday and Thursday next week. So we're closed on Thanksgiving Day and then on the day before, that Wednesday before. And that's to give our very hardworking staff here some time to prepare for their own Thanksgiving celebrations. Nita has this really great comment. I remember going to Gibbs back in the 60s. Yeah, a lot of folks in our community remember the Gibbs Planetarium with quite a bit of fondness. And then there was that long period of time in between the mid 90s when the Gibbs closed and then 2014 when we opened the planetarium here at the State Museum when Columbia didn't have a planetarium. So that was super sad. So it's really great that we now have the planetarium. And I don't want to spoil any details, but I'm just going to put a little bug out there that there is some really cool news involving the planetarium that will be coming out and being made more public in the next few months. It's going to be getting a bit of a facelift, shall we say, and I'll leave it at that. It's not really details we want to release to the public yet because we're still working everything out. But there's going to be some really great changes coming to the planetarium, hopefully next year. Yes, actually, Francis Marion's planetarium is really, really lovely. It's a really nice small planetarium. Our planetarium manager is actually good friends with Jeanette Myers over there, who's um, their planetarium person. So yeah, that is a really nice facility at Francis Marion. What is the relationship between the SC State Museum and the Smithsonian? I've seen the stickers on the door. So there's a program called Smithsonian Affiliations, and we're a member of that organization. A number of museums around the country are Smithsonian affiliates. It doesn't mean that they're actually part of the Smithsonian Institution, uh, but it means that they are sort of partnered with Smithsonian. If you can actually, if you Google Smithsonian affiliates, you'll find the Smithsonian affiliates website, and you can actually find on that website a list of the museums around the country that are Smithsonian affiliates. Um, and here at the museum, we actually have a relatively new executive director. Her name is Amy Bartomelia, and she joined us a little over a year ago from the Smithsonian American History Museum. So we now very much have a really neat Smithsonian connection in our new executive director here. But again, we are an affiliate. We're not actually like a Smithsonian museum, but that is a group of, you could kind of think of it as friends of the Smithsonian museums. Yeah, Cindy, I hope you do come by and check out the planetarium. So just in the last few minutes that we have left, I'm going to change the camera setting back so that we can see Jupiter itself. We'll see if we can get a view of those cloud bands again, just here for the last like 2 minutes. Let's see, I have to get my camera to set right. Yeah, I can sort of see them. My super touchy camera controls there. Yeah, looking pretty blurry. And actually what's happening is Jupiter is beginning to get lower in the sky now as we get on into the evening. And as Jupiter gets lower, that sort of atmospheric turbulence thing is going to tend to get worse. That's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to show Jupiter tonight. Is this is actually going to be one of our last chances for a little while to see Jupiter, at least in our telescope here, as Jupiter gets lower in the sky. Our telescope here at the museum actually has trouble seeing things that are really down low in the sky because they can kind of get blocked by the museum building. And also the eyepiece and camera place where we put cameras ends up really high above the floor when we look at things low in the sky. So uh, we can enjoy Jupiter for now, and then as we get into the winter, we're going to be focusing more on, like I said, deep sky objects like the Andromeda Galaxy and the Orion Nebula. We'll also have moon viewing on those nights that are great for the moon. Um, so there's a lot to look forward to. Again, the next live stream is on December 4th at 7:30, and we're going to be talking about deep sky objects in our late fall, early winter sky like the Andromeda Galaxy that night. So it's 8:30. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the great questions and comments and for being engaged with us here at the museum. Stay safe out there. Stay well. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and I hope to see you again on December 4th. Bye, you all.